right, is the leader by a long shot in this space. But what we're seeing is we are leading a new class of assistants that's fit for work. We're not the only one. There's a lot of startups that are tackling this area, many with very custom vertical use cases. For example, there's a startup that's not even on here that's just doing meeting scheduling. It's an assistant just for meeting scheduling. So we're seeing a lot of these work-centric assistants. Microsoft plays in both. I sort of see them as a little half-hearted. Cortana maybe probably a little more business in the end, but we'll see. And then the interesting thing, of course, is Google and Amazon both trying to take their consumer products and bring them to the workplace. Amazon's certainly ahead in here there too. They announced this Alexa for Work project. They were, Michelle, they were at Enterprise Connect, positioning their stuff in this space. They clearly want to go into enterprise. So will there even be a separate market, or will Amazon and Google and Microsoft win? Like, there's only one assistant, and it's the same at work as it is at home. This is a central question for us as a strategy, and I think it's an interesting thing to think about. It's our view, unsurprisingly, that the market will in fact have a separate segmentation for enterprise assistants. And as we thought about it, we actually concluded they're really different, actually. And so I'm going to take you through our logic on there. And part of the rationale for this is you can look at history. Like, is it fragmented in other adjacencies? So one of the obvious ones is telephony. It's very fragmented. So there's different consumer products, like these home phones here, than there are work phones. We obviously make work phones. We don't make any phones for the home. The phone service is fragmented too. You have, although the telcos share both, they have different products for the different markets. Video, completely fragmented. Before the iPhone, I would say non-existence in the consumer space. Now it's mostly mobile phones. Of course, you all know, and we know, there's a totally different set of products in the workplace. Networking, definitely fragmented. Different products in consumer and enterprise. Most people have this little Linksys box in their house. I don't. I actually have Cisco networking in my house. I tell people I have like 70 wired Ethernet ports or something like that. I have 3 APs. I have a controller, but I'm not your average consumer. And it's funny, like I had, it's big, but I'm geeking out a little. I do need more than one router. But I had like these guys come and install some stuff that, like, some internet connected blinds for my home office actually, and they were like, "Yeah, we need to access your router." I'm like, I don't think you understand. I mean, it's not like, because everyone else just has the one box. I'm like, do you mean which of my Ethernet switches? Do you mean the Wi-Fi AP? And they have no idea about that. Anyway, but most people, besides me, have totally different setups. And Cisco obviously addresses enterprise and not consumer at all. We used to have a consumer business. We got rid of it. So what's going to happen with assistants? Will it be all consumer, or will it be all enterprise? So we actually looked at this, and we found no less than seven fundamental differences between these two markets, and that leads us to the conclusion that they're going to be separate. The first is use cases, and this is in some sense the most important one. What's the problem you have to solve for the customer? They're different. What is it people ask Alexa? What's the weather? Set a timer. I use this all the time. It's my wife's favorite use case too. For her baking, she's big into that. Play a song, of course. Who's the actor in this movie? My personal thing, and I'm a little weird, I always see a movie and I wonder whether the actor's dead. Like, if there's someone old, like, I'll watch an 80s movie, I'm like, oh, is that guy still alive? Alexa, is blah, blah, blah still alive? I don't know why I'm fascinated by this question about whether they're dead or not. I don't know. So I ask Alexa all the time, turn on the lights, remind me to do something, put milk on my grocery list, let's play trivia. These are all great consumer use cases. Almost none of them are the kind of things you'd want in the office. There is one overlap here, turn on the lights. We see control of room stuff, like close the blinds, is a good use case. The tech is totally different, of course. We support turn on the lights through our touch panel, through our integrations with Crestron, for example. So the technology enabling is even totally different, even if the use case has a little overlap.
You could do a remind me too as well. That kind of counts.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I would say that's probably true. And like a lot of these things, there's fuzzy overlap. But on the whole, I think it starts to look a lot different as you get beyond the basic ones. You heard Rowan talk about the 5 levels of meeting AI. As you start to get to the higher levels, it's really clearly different. Even at command and control, which is what these are, they're different. Schedule a meeting is not going to happen at home. Bring up the slides, not going to happen at home. Start the meeting, no. Approve expenses, well, I have a kid in college, so sort of, but not really. Add people to a meeting. These are all enterprise cases, right, that are not likely to show up in the home. And that just means you're going to tune it differently. So the use cases are pretty different with a little bit of overlap. In the middle, of course, we expect everyone to ask the weather. And although we haven't implemented it yet, we'll do weather, we'll do time. I mean, these things have come. But
real quick,
yeah.
I see there's 2 totally different use cases. But today, especially with millennials, we have this work-life blend. I don't start at 9 and end at 5.
Yeah, of course
I'm always working, I'm always living.
Yeah.
So at home, I'm going to want to say, schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to say, what's
exactly.
what's on my file.
Yes.
And at work, I'm going to want to say, remind me to get milk on the way home.
We think you'll do that with this. So I'm gonna
Okay.
talk about that when we get to places.
Okay.
Great question. So identity is also really different. So how does identity get handled in the consumer case? Well, when do you all have Alexas? No? Okay. All right. No?
Well, I have a
Cool.
Sonos one that
Okay.
speaks to
The
Alexa.
Sonos one, that's good.
Same thing.
I have 4. I'm telling you, I have even more. I have a lot of wired ports. They're all full. I have even more. I have like 50 Wi-Fi devices on at any time in my house.
I trust you have a segmented network, so you have a little bit of security between
I do. I run 3 different VLANs on my Wi-Fi network. I mean, come on. I work for Cisco. You can't be a CTO at Cisco unless you have like Quas enabled in your house. So so in the consumer side, it's all about who's the account owner. You basically associate the Alexa with your Amazon account. They're starting to look at, I think Google can recognize different voices in the home.
In
Amazon,
some places, yeah.
In some places, Amazon
It's not
doesn't have
new,
this yet.
yeah.
It's quite hard to do, but it's easier because it's just 3, 4, 5 people at the most, right, in the family. So that's the identity model. In a workplace, it turns out to be a much bigger problem. It's one of scale. You need to be able to now recognize and look at the conference room, which is one of the most important areas for these assistants. You could, in principle, have anyone in the company show up in a conference room. So to solve that identity problem, you need different data. You need to start to integrate with the corporate directory, which we have. You have to scale it way bigger, and the technical solutions are different too. So the the voice biometric, which is what Google is using, does not scale very large in terms of number of people. So we have been looking more at face recognition. So you've seen this in probably a few times at demos in our systems. We're still developing the machine learning models for that. But you have just a lot more information in a face than you have in a voice biometric, so you can get a lot more of it. And there is a camera because it's a video conferencing system. So an Alexa doesn't have a camera. They're trying to. I don't know about you, but I'm not putting an Amazon Alexa in my bedroom with a camera. They want you to. They make a little thing that's the spot.
Yeah.
That's like an alarm clock replacement. It has a camera. I'm like,
No.
if they took the camera out, I would put it in my bedroom. But like literally,
Your
just
enterprise ID, you also have to think on GDPR because that can't get out.
oh yeah.
Not gonna
yeah.
identify
Well,
people.
GDPR does not say the data can't leave Europe.
Well, it can't leave. Okay, it can't.
You need permission.
Yeah.
You have to. The user has to consent.
Yes.
They have the right to their data. They have the right to revoke the consent.
Yep.
Does not require. Otherwise, every
It
single.
has to be secured.
It has to be secure. We're doing all of that. So you're leaning ahead to security, which I'll get to in the next slide. It's another big difference. But just the technology for this is different. Another thing we've observed to scale up identity, we're using multi-factor identification. So you saw it on stage today, where we combine the proximity detection part of it, and look with face recognition. We get some other secret sauce where we're boiling in the labs. You'll be hearing about in the future to identify people, and all that allows us to scale up the recognition accuracy to larger and larger users. The least interesting one is the voice biometric, which is going to show up in the consumer space. So the technology stacks are inverted. You use cameras in conference rooms. You can't really do that in the home as much. So it turns out it's a different problem. You already started here, Lynn, on this one. So security. Consumer, Amazon does have to file GDPR, but remember, it does not say they can't do this. It just means you have to give consent, and it means you can revoke consent, which means you can turn off your Alexa. So there's an opt-in and there's an opt-out. You either use the product or you don't. And everything you say is a source of data. On the enterprise side, we're worried terribly about the security considerations for this thing, and we don't have all the answers, by the way. The use case that keeps me up at night is the CEO. It's always the stupid CEO use case I worry about. Stupid CEO walks into a conference room and says, okay, WebEx. I have to do that these days. I've had this problem in my house for a long while. Okay, WebEx, start the BroadSoft acquisition meeting. And if that was a statement made by the CEO 9 months ago while we were doing the acquisition, sensitive confidential information was just leaked. This information does have to be processed in the cloud, so it cannot be end-to-end encrypted. It needs to be looked at. People sometimes look at it. People look at what you say to Amazon to figure out how to improve the training. This is the nature of these systems. So how do we deal with that? So we're solving it with controls, which is tech speak for allowing people to opt in and opt out. So, for example, it's not on all of these systems. Those systems get it, so that you can turn it off in the corporate executive building, for example, which is almost surely what every IT guy will want. So we have visibility, like we're going to allow people to know, like where is it on, what's being said, how many utterances on the customer side. On our side, we'll apply many of these GDPR constructs. It talks about things like access. So who is allowed to access whatever data we do have, right? Because we'll have to look at what people say in order to analyze the system. That concerns me greatly. So we want to manage like who's allowed to see that and make sure it's encrypted and make sure it's stored. And if we do store it, like you can opt out of storage, but if you opt in, which we'll need the beginning big time, by the way, who has access? How long do we store it for? These are all the things that'll be like must have. Like if you're an IT guy, you're going to think about this for 10 minutes and you're going to have all these questions, right?
And
so
to be forgotten just makes you want to lie down with a cold compress on your head.
Yeah, exactly. So different considerations, very strong in the enterprise. Then this gets back to the issue you were asking about, where does it live? Access. So on the consumer side, the primary places are in the living room, although Amazon wants to tackle every room, and they're really smart about it. They're building all these different form factors for different places, right? The Alexa can, for most rooms, the little Alexa, the one that looks like an alarm clock, the one that looks like a screen for the kitchen. They want it in every single room. But the living room is clearly king today. And then there's a personal version, so you carry it around. So your mobile phone, this was Apple's bet, by the way. Apple bet, and they were wrong, that it was going to be on your mobile phone.
Siri.
It was Siri. Mm-hmm. And they were wrong. It turned out that people like it better as a shared unit in the space. And it turns out it's a harder problem, so it's what we call far field audio. So you have to have a different set of microphones. Alexa has a ring of microphones, as do you heard this today about microphone arrays. You need multiple microphones to pick up, these wake words, as we call them, or spoken commands at distance. So you can't, this is why if you've ever just put Siri down on a table far away and said, hey Siri, it mostly doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you have, to my point, the tech follows the use case. Personal and living room actually require different hardware. You wouldn't even think of it, but they do. Turns out the same is true in enterprise. If you want to solve for the conference room, you're going to want to, and at the scale, you're going to focus on, in fact, embedding it in things already there. Video conferencing systems and speakerphones. Then there's going to be the workspace. To your point, wherever I work, I'm going to want to access it. So as an employee, what's the thing with you all the time? Well, actually, Alexa would be terrible for that because I don't have the Alexa can with me when I'm on the road at Starbucks, but I do have my work laptop. So you can imagine, no comment on anything beyond that an assistant might show up, say, inside an app on your desktop, or it might show up on your desk phone. We showed that too. Personal video units. So wherever you're working, you want the assistant there as well. All of that is different tech than the Alexa cans. That's interesting. Understanding. What I mean by that is, and Tim talked about this, there's this thing called natural language processing. And if you're not technical, the general process is you speak something, and you first convert the speech to text. That's automatic speech recognition, or ASR. That is the easy problem, meaning it's largely considered a solved problem and becoming commodity. Yeah. The harder part is taking the text output and figuring out what did you mean to say. And that is, at its deepest, a completely unsolved problem. Will never be fully solved. But for things like commands and so on and so forth, we can solve these things. So that's natural language processing, understanding intent. You're all doing that right now. We're sitting here for an hour, and you're doing these things. You're not converting it to text, but you're understanding what I'm saying. That's actually the hardest part of this. What's that?
It's both.
Right.
But we have shared taxonomy, so we
have shared taxonomy, context,
yeah.
History. This is why the understanding part is the hardest. So it turns out the tech is different here too. So Amazon and all are solving what we call for broad and shallow domains. they're a step better than the old IVR systems that were just doing menus. They're a little better, but they're following fairly rigid structures. And this is why when you talk to Alexa, you have to be pretty precise about what you say or it won't get it. Now there's some variability, but not a lot. So it means it's broad, which is it's programmed with 10,000 skills, and each of them understands just a few variations of how to say it. In the enterprise, if you look at the use cases, you're going to want to go to deep but narrow domains, which means you're going to want to solve a smaller set of problems. Like I don't care about is the actor dead necessarily, but I'm going to want to, especially as we get to the higher levels of machine AI, you're going to want to start to understand the lingo of the business. So inside of Cisco, for example, I may say something like, "Okay, WebEx, ask Keith to file a CPOL on the latest Spark HMS service." That's something that is spoken in the hallways. Look at the lingo I just flung out. Acronyms, code words,
would not like that.
would never get it. Never get it. The only way to do this, you actually have to do custom training. The machine learning models have to be trained on every one of these vertical segments one at a time. So we bought a company that does that. That's what MindMill does. It's Deep Domain is their code name for that. Deep Domain Natural Language Processing. So even the technology for understanding this stuff, Amazon will go in a different direction than we will go to bring these things higher and higher up the enterprise AI level. Then there's context. So in order to, and Lynn, you're just talking about this, like we have, there's all this information used to be smart about what did the user really mean when they said this thing. And on the consumer side, it's actually fairly shallow. So these tools look at things like social media profiles, purchasing history, right? So if you say, order me paper towels, and you ordered paper towels from this brand before, it'll know that's probably what you meant, or even if it's not sure if you said paper towels or, prong trolls, I don't know, it'll figure you meant paper towels because that's what you ordered before. So that's context. Purchase history, music preferences, conversation samples. The context in the workplace is different, and we saw that on stage today. So if I want to start my APMR, it's going to look at or start the meeting with Bob. Who's Bob? What meeting? It's probably this meeting on my calendar. So meeting history, my chat and file share history, corporate directory profile and structure, org structure, call history. These are surrounding contexts that allow us to make decisions about what you really meant to say. Totally different. And then there's what's the content. In the end of the day, when you talk to Amazon, it gives you content. The weather, the stock price, whether this guy is dead or alive. So those come from databases or content sources, right? Stock sources, weather sources, maps, music. Much of it public domain database, others like music, their own private databases. Some of that overlaps. Stock and weather, yeah, I think so. Like I said, I'm pretty sure we'll do those. But most of the time you're interested in other things. The holy grail is share my presentation. I mean, in a meeting, if we just delivered, share the slides, and you didn't ever have to fuddle with even plugging anything in or even having your laptop, we would sell like hotcakes, these things. So you need the presentation. Does Amazon have PowerPoint presentations in their databases? I don't think so. But people share them in Spark spaces and they share them in WebEx meetings. And so we do. Microsoft doesn't too. They're a contender, I make no mistake, but you need an enterprise-specific product for this. Presentations, calendars, documents, directory, enterprise content. The way you get them is you have a system that serves enterprise content. And so enterprise vendors have those systems, us and Microsoft most specifically. Box, Dropbox, they could all do these kind of things too, but not the consumer players. So our conclusion was, this is going to be a different market. And we think intelligence and assistance are going to be important both in consumer and at work. And this is why we've entered this market. This is why we've spent so much energy on it. This is why we're not just shipping an Amazon, in our thing. We think it's pretty different and it's going to be pretty important. And not only that, we think we're going to win. Or we're going to have big market share. I don't know what to say it, right? And then if we go back to these use cases, the different 7 things, we serve pretty strongly in all of them. Use cases, we understand them. Others could do this. It's not the biggest thing. But here's where it gets really interesting, like identity, and I've sort of already talked about this. I mean, we've been investing for years in this stuff. This ultrasonic proximity, it ain't easy. It's really not. We're going to under the hood ship Gen 2 of it. This is Michael's stuff. You won't even notice. It'll just show up. It'll just get better. And we've been working on it for like a year and a half. We have this like signal processing nerds who do all this stuff with you wouldn't understand any of the math. I don't. but we have people who worry about those things, right? So it's hard. Face recognition technology, we're still working on it. It's not ready to ship yet. Very difficult to work at scale for an enterprise, and so we're not able to get the accuracy high enough for larger enterprises. So we're still working on training the models. And because of our greater privacy considerations, we're not doing the Facebook playbook where we just watch everyone's meetings and use their faces to train our system. We're not doing that. So
that would work.
That would work, but we're not doing that. I got to ask this question. I got to ask this question today. We're debating having it as an opt-in, but we haven't done that yet. So we're investing in these things, and it's quite different. So we think we're pretty well ahead here. Security is top of mind for us, and again, I think we're way ahead on how a lot of people deliver SaaS services securely. The biggest one by a long shot is this, access. We already have microphone arrays, cameras, screens, and speakers in millions of conference rooms around the world. Even if we did nothing else, even if we fumbled our way through this thing, this alone would make us a leader. It's sort of the use your incumbency to deliver this thing, because without a doubt, the place this thing needs to be is in the stuff that already is in the room, and ideally with cameras, by the way. So
it's a choice of enabling my existing Cisco device,
yes,
or buying an Amazon device.
Yes, that's right.
I don't want to buy another device.
Yeah, you don't want to buy another, and it won't work as well. Is my point,
yeah.
Because it won't have a camera, by the way, and it won't be as integrated with the system. And they're trying. They have a demo where you can say, and they showed it at EC on stage, right? Join my meeting, and which it can do, but. You hear the dial, you hear the pins, the DTMF plug in, and you don't get the integration. You can't really control the system. So again, it's nowhere near the quality you get if you have this as an integrated solution. And again, without the video output to show, and you see this all the time when we say, okay, WebEx, you see what's being spoken. It gives you confidence and accuracy. I don't even talk about that, but generally our view is there's a higher bar for reliability for the stuff in the office than at home. That's harder to hit. Another reason why we have narrower domains. So all these reasons add up means the install base matters enormously. This is why for the last few years, even before we shipped the Assistant, we were shipping hardware with this ridiculously overpowered processors in it. This NVIDIA Jetson processors that can do all this AI have been doing nothing for years in these video systems, so that we're seeding the market with the hardware that's ready for the assistants. And again, you can only do that if you're an established leader.
I remember when you put Jetson in there, I'm like, they're doing something.
They're doing something. Now you know.
I know they're doing something.
Now you do. Now you know.
You just put this super powerful thing in there, and you're like, what's it for? You're like, don't worry, we'll get back to you on that.
Exactly right. It's sort of it's what we call the Tesla theory of hardware design too, and I'm a big Tesla fan. One of the things they got right is they shipped all these sensors and stuff in the car before they even had the software, because this way they build out the install base and they can fix everything with a software upgrade. It's another reason why the Assistant is only showing up in cloud-connected systems. We need to be able to update the software all the time. Every time we want to develop a new model, we have to push an update. The debate we've been having, currently we push new software updates in the stable channel every 2 weeks. We've been debating whether that's often enough. And again, if you compare that with traditional enterprise upgrade cycles at the 18-month cycle, 2 weeks we're worried isn't fast enough. So again, huge. This is why you can only do it for cloud registered stuff. Anyway, understanding even that tech is different. So we have some unique things that we got here that I don't. It's not like Amazon couldn't figure it out, but it is a different problem, and we have some unique technology here. I talked a bunch today about the WebEx graph. It's something we've had for a while, by the way, but we didn't really give it a name and talk about it in that way, and that's why I could say things like it's available already today in some forms. But we're using it to power this thing, and it's, again, this contextual information, your history, the connectedness, the spaces, the meetings you already had. We have all of that by being a market leader in this space. So anyone who's a market leader in sort of these enterprise collaboration tools will have this context, and due to our share, that makes us a player. And we have content through WebEx Teams, through WebEx meetings, and through integrations and many of the other sources we've done. We have it. Even the corporate directory, to give an example, since most people have the corporate directory locked up in a piece of software that sits in a data center that's like 15 years old, good luck getting access to it. But thankfully, we've been seeding directory sync agents for the last 5 years, in our system, and so we have been building this access to this content that's a critical part of the solution. So that's why we think it's going to be 2 different markets, and we think we're going to be a market leader.
So is there no future or value in having a dedicated virtual assistant device like an Alexa? Because I know you started with Monica, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is there any value in it? Is there any possibility that Cisco will go in that direction, or will it all
What do you
be
mean by
integrated?
standalone?
Like a device in the middle of the conference room rather than being integrated.
There is a
into
device in the
room
middle of the
system.
conference room. It's called speakerphone.
Yeah, well, not all of them.
Not all of the conference rooms have speakerphones, you mean?
Right, and some of them are.
They
room
have TVs
systems. Yeah.
with like things you plug in the back.
Yeah.
We'll put the assistant there. So listen, our view is what we have, like we think that every one of these use cases, there's sort of a natural thing to put it in, and it's better to put it there than a standalone thing.
So do you plan to say, hey, WebEx, give me closed captioning for this conference?
You saw, I mean, that exact use case we didn't have today, but that's not far from what we showed you on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the screen output makes that kind of stuff interesting, right? Another reason why the video output, the screen makes all this stuff much better. So.
I noticed that during the keynote, when someone was doing the voice assistant thing, everyone was staring at the screen to see if it got the translation.
Yeah, exactly
it's
right.
addictive. It's like, is it going to get it right? Oh,
yeah.
got it right.
It does multipass correction, by the way. If you're really clever, you can pick up on that. So we actually have 2 levels of. You'll see it say things and delete itself.
And fix itself. Oh,
yeah.
That's cool.
So there's an ASR layer that's doing that, and again, that's pretty standard practice. But then, as our system processes the NLP, because there's a set of context about what you might mean, we go back and we actually correct the text to represent what our understanding said. Again, this gets back to some of the differences between the consumer and enterprise as we can apply that. So you'll say, and you might have seen this, he said something like, and I think the initial was like way off, join my meeting, and it said something totally wrong, and it corrected it to meeting,
So the first pass is just taking the exact sounds out of your mouth and trying to put it in the text,
Yeah.
and the second pass is looking at the text and
That's
saying,
right.
wait a minute, is that right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
This is what the MyMail guys have been doing since we acquired them, is that, amongst other things,
That's neat.
is working on NLP-based correction for text.
Do you think that in the future, but in artificial intelligence, we are right now building expert systems for different domains, like this one, these 2 domains. But do you in the future think that we can build something above them that combine different domains? So, for example, it will be another super assistant that knows both worlds, and so you can. These super assistants can mix, like a blended something.
Absolutely. So I'm not a believer in generalized artificial intelligence, which is like HAL, that can think independently and be creative. I don't believe in that. But the idea of combining multiple machine learning systems together is exactly how most of this stuff work. So for example, if Google has this awesome thing where you show it a picture and it identifies all the things in the picture, right? You can find all the text and it can highlight it. If you actually look at how that's implemented, that is multiple independently trained machine learning models operating in tandem. The first thing it does is it's trained to recognize rectangles with blocks of text. And then it's trained to recognize square, and the next thing they do is they apply a recognizer of squares that identify letters, to just identify boundaries between letters. And then it's a boundary detector. They train a text boundary detector. And then they have another ML model, totally trained differently, to recognize the character. And then they put all those things together. So many of these systems are already built by cascading these things together. And so for sure, we'll see that too. So there'll be, and in fact, that's a lot of how the natural language understanding works. The deep domain means we train it on meeting vocabulary. And then we'll train it separately on like note-taking, and we'll train it separately on the lingo of your business. So every one of these will be a different system, and then we have another ML model that figures out which of those to use. And this is already what you were seeing. So the first layer of AI is it recognizes the domain of the thing based on the text, and then it passes the whole sentence to the next layer model. So absolutely, it'll be cascaded.
In 20 years more, we have all of this stuff totally developed. So this general artificial intelligence will be just to manage all the domains.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah, I don't know about generalized, but
it
certainly
will be a cycle like generalized.
in the sense that it can cover lots
if
of
you
different
have
things.
Hundreds of thousands of domains.
Yeah. For things that fall into the ML design paradigm, that's true. Yeah.
Because in an enterprise, you'd have to have multiples. If HR is having a meeting and then finance is having a meeting, and engineering is having a meeting.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, actually, I had a similar question because you're saying these are separate markets, the consumer and enterprise. But from the customer experience point of view, you're still Jonathan. When you're at work or at home, you're still Jonathan.
Yes.
So wouldn't maybe you would prefer to use the same assistant whether you're at home or at work? So why would you choose WebEx?
Yeah.
And Alexa when you're at home when you could use the same assistant?
Well, I guess I just went through sort of my argumentation on why I think they'll have to be different. But I would argue you're the same person at home or work, but you certainly do different things. The type of conversations I have, the type of activities I do are different. When I'm at work in a meeting, I don't usually like, hey, is this person dead? In that meeting? Like, I usually do that.
Systems are going to do that, though. I mean, I have a feeling they might.
Maybe that one. That guy who retired a few years ago, is he dead yet?
You have to have the ultimate answer in both.
What's that?
You have to have the ultimate answer in both.
Oh, yeah. So, but my point is the things you do at work are different, and they obviously have some overlap, and we'll cover the things in the overlap. But it's different. You do different things.
I guess you could have two assistants. You could be at the office and say, Cisco scheduling a meeting, and then you can say, Siri, remind me to pick up my milk.
The other thing people are playing with is they're using, I think Microsoft shipped this thing where you could say, hey, Cortana, ask Siri to do something.
Yes.
I was going to say, can I say, hey, Cisco,
we're totally open to that kind of thing.
So
I think something like that we think is better. I'm not sure about the ask Siri, but what I could see is, we'll have a higher layer ML that is trained to recognize something as a consumer question versus a work question. Mm-hmm. We'll train that, and then we'll fawn off all the consumer things to Amazon. Like, I'm very much in favor of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that is the way we're thinking about addressing them versus I'm just going to bring the Alexa to work, and that'll be enough. Mm-hmm. It won't be enough for your work needs.
So you won't be able to say, if you're at home, say, hey, Alexa, ask WebEx to schedule a meeting for Thursday morning.
Maybe. Again, I think, if these things can be connected.
Yeah, because I think you shouldn't have to worry whether you have to use Alexa or any other assistant. You, as a consumer, you should just be able to ask anything, and the assistant.
It's in the same way like your computer runs multiple pieces of software. You don't expect one app to do everything for you. So the piece that's missing is the selector. Like, which app do I launch?
Exactly.
Once that problem solved, whether it's by asking Siri or use a keyword, or whether it's more smarter, it's the same fragmentation I'm talking about. There'll be different tech to solve these different problems, and even the hardware and everything else will be focused on the particular footprint in question.
But probably it's a point of view that it's a lot of frameworks to download things. Just the way that company, for example, think, and you download all the PPTs, all the teams, or whatever. But I think the millennials are the new way that you just want that the company knows you. So there is not so good frameworks to upload you to the company. If these systems upload you to the company, there will be not two different worlds, because just they know the company know that you wish to play the guitar. The company know a lot of things, and so you make a lot of work in the graphic user interface. But I think the next way will be to build personal user interface. So I wish to build my user interface, not that the company just make.
Yeah.
I don't want to be another brick in the wall.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to be a cell in Excel of the company.
Yeah.
I want to be me.
Right. And that's a lot of personalization, right? So, and that's another area where these assistants can be really powerful, is personalized. And that personalization manifests itself in a few ways. One of them is with the context, right? The system feels personalized when it knows all these things about me, and in particular knows my work life, right?
What's my schedule tomorrow?
What's my schedule? Who do I work with? Who do I have meetings with? What files? What do I talk about? What are the meetings that are important to me? And some of my personal things will matter too, less at work, more at home. But that helps with personalization. And then there's another aspect of it, which is just training the system. So you can imagine that as the training gets more and more focused on these vertical domains, maybe these things could be personalized to the way I interact, the way I speak, and learn from my interactions with the thing how to understand me better. So in a lot of ways, the assistants allow for the ultimate in personalization of the experience and how you interact with someone.
So kind of like now on my BlackBerry, I can create an email just by going flick, 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 because it knows what I'm going to say.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
And it knows peculiar phrases I use and just presents the words.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Do you think that you'll be embedding your WebEx assistant into things like those lovely robots that trundle around your office? So somebody can go up and say, hey, robot, or whatever its name is, where can I find Chuck Robbins' office?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it just will not go away, but still.
Yeah. Well, it gets back to, I think I would reframe the question as, are we going to have a platform aspect to the assistant? And that's not what we're doing immediately. But for sure, as part of our platform and open story, we would want to allow others to build the WebEx assistant into other products. So if someone wanted to build a wandering robot, not personally a big believer in those, but if someone wanted to do it, then sure, we would allow them to do that.
Because I think I've seen them in your offices, actually.
We've had them for demo purposes. I tried it once.
So this MindMeld
Yeah.
company is working on the artificial intelligence research, right?
Yes, so
How many people are there?
it was 30-ish. 30 about. I have to get a precise number. We acquired them about a year and a half ago. Today on stage, Tim Tuttle, who did the demo, he was a CEO of MindMeld. So his team has built the WebEx assistant.
And all the updates will be available to all devices, or
Cloud-connected devices, yes, that run.
and how frequently?
Well, we push updates every 2 weeks right now.
And what are you waiting for?
What are we waiting for?
For a Spanish mark.
What
do you need to say work on the Spanish?
Yeah, I mentioned before when you asked this question, it's very expensive to train it on. So the first thing we need is we need to get some market success with English. Once we have market success and people using it and prove demand, that will, like any other market, land, expand. So we'll start with our biggest market in English and we'll expand to adjacents as we gain more traction.
Google Home told me the same.
But you mentioned before that you don't expect it to be HAL. You don't expect it to be like a life form where it's created
I do not.
and a member of the meeting. And I agree. But I do think it could be a lot more intelligent than, it's going to be a lot more intelligent than just start my meeting. It's going to really know me. Do we want to free it to chime in when it can help without a command? Like the example I'm thinking of is we're here and we say, okay, great meeting everyone, let's meet again next Tuesday. And it says, no, David, you're not going to be in the office next Tuesday. Oh, thank you.
Absolutely, level 4.
And that's without me saying, hey, Cisco is my...
Yeah, that's
cool.
That's level 4.
That's like a meeting participant.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. Level 4 is level 4 that Rowan described today on stage is they're basically like a team member, proactively offering input and suggestions without being prompted. That's the trick. It's just listening.
Knowledgeable, but not a creative.
Not a creator. Creator is where it's currently there is no known technology for that right now.
Rowan wrote
Science
a blog
fiction.
on those 5 levels of meeting AI, and he has it all broken down.
Okay.
So I'll send that to you.
Yeah.
So I would take it you were doing some research not only into creating the assistants, but creating better ways to train the assistants to make it less expensive to do it in Spanish and whatever the heck.
Well,
I'm sure somebody is. Are you?
Would like to get there. I
Yeah.
don't right now. That no would be the answer at the moment. It's fairly tedious. I don't know if you all know how people train these systems. It's interesting. I give a talk on this. I have a machine learning for non-techie talk that I give that explains many of these things to try and demystify some of it. But it's fascinating. A lot of it is trained through manual labor. So, like, literally, if you want to know the different ways to start a meeting, we've done this. We've hired human beings to write down every single way they could think of to say, join my meeting. Hundreds, thousands of different ways of saying the same thing that come back and get fed into the natural language processing system. And we pay, 0.1 cents per way. And there's startups, there's a whole industry now for this. Crowdflower is one of the ones we use. You give them these tasks for human beings to generate training data, and they go hire very inexpensive labor, usually in impoverished nations, that could benefit from the money, and they're, unfortunately, you're not going to like this answer, when they're very good English speakers as well. Those nations are getting a lot of this work of generating massive amounts of human-generated training data. This goes by the name Mechanical Turk, which is you take something that looks like it's software. So there's literally an app, and you submit your job. Like, I need 1,000 ways of saying this, and you go to the app, and the next day the app has the answer. But behind the scene was a human being that just went and wrote it all down and put it back into the computer. This is how a lot of it is being. So this is what we're doing.
Doing both supervised and supervised and unsupervised.
It's right now
training,
almost all this is supervised, and that's why you need to generate training data. Training data is supervised learning.
Does it also learn from use as opposed to direct programming?
It
If
learns,
I have one and
yeah.
I say start a meeting in my own way and it doesn't work for me, will it figure it out eventually?
Right now, the way it figures it out is it figures it out because people will go look at failures of recognition and see the misses, and they'll go add more training data to the training set.
So when it fails, someone who works for Cisco gets an alarm and hears what I said. And fixes
Not
it.
an alarm, because it would be ringing all night long.
Well, yeah, because a notification.
Not even. There'll be literally. This is one of the things the team. I saw the first dashboards actually on this.
We get millions of
Is
them?
success rates. Yeah. So what's the accuracy rate for? I told you there's multiple layers. So first is recognizing the domain, and then recognizing the intent off of that. So every utterance gets mapped to an intent. Like start meeting is an intent. That's something you want to do. Start my meeting. Go meeting. Have my meeting now. Please get going. Those are different ways to say it. The system maps the word to the intent. Most intents require data. So not start my meeting, but join Bob's PMR requires a piece of data, which is who's the person. So the system has to recognize the intent and then extract the data. If you don't say Bob, like join the PMR, this is the stuff MindMill does. It like whose PMR would you like to join? It will say back and it will collect the data. So we have accuracy rates for how often we're able to map to every one of these things. And then what we'll have is we'll have logs where people will go and take some of these. I'm very worried about the security aspects of this, but there's no way to build these systems without human beings ultimately doing this. Are we out of time?
Yeah,
you're
it's
way
obviously
Oh,
very,
I'm looking.
very
You
popular
gotta stop me.
topic.
Yeah. We're
One
stopping
of
now.
the critical.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, we should.
Okay. Anyway, you.
I have a last question.
Yes.
Do you develop a unique system of virtual assistants for all the companies, or it's a specific virtual assistant?
I'm sorry. Did you say Unix?
A unique.
Yes.
Or it depends on the industry, the company.
I understand now. Yes.
And how long it takes to
Yeah.
implement the solution.
Right now, it's generic. It's the same for everyone. And for level 1 AI, command and control, that's sufficient, as well as level 2. When we go to level 3, which, maybe 2-3 years, we'll need to build customer, company, market, vertical AIs. So we're not there yet. This is a very difficult problem. We will get there someday. Great
Awesome.
question.
Thank
All right.
you so much.
Thank you.
Really cool stuff.
All right.
Thank